It's September 14th, if I'm not mistaken, 2020. And this is a very special edition episode. We have a special guest, Pete Turner. How you doing, Pete?
Pretty good right now.
And also co-host Mr. Devin Dunnigan. What about you, brother? How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm sitting here. Got a hurricane that's supposedly coming through, but I'm holding down the fort, and I think this is going to be a pretty good episode. So that's pretty much all I got, Steve.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to get into it, but first I'll talk about the preface of the album here. We're going to be doing One More from the Road by Lynyrd Skynyrd from the year 1976. It's the normal plane crash lineup, Skynyrd, with the addition of Steve Gaines, and he was a pretty new addition to the band. And the story goes that they would tell him to turn his guitar down on some of the songs because he didn't know them and just act like he was playing. But I think he did a great job on specifically certain songs like "T for Texas," but we'll get into that later. And let's see. And also going into the album, the story goes that they needed an album of a year, every year. So, um, with Pronounced and the other one. So this was about their third or fourth album that they would come out for them, if I'm not mistaken. And they needed one for '76. So they said, well, we don't have enough material probably, so we needed a live album. They went to Tom Dowd and he said, let's do 3 shows at the Fox Theater Atlanta. Um, so so you won't have to clean up a lot of bad stuff and mistakes and stuff from it, and they could have their choice of songs to put on the album. So that's what they decided to do. The 3 shows. I'm assuming they were back to back days, but that's the way they usually go. But so what are your opening thoughts to the album, brother? Z.
Well, I knew this album for a very long time, and I really enjoy it. I think it's a really good live album. Well, I'll talk about that at a later time. One of my favorite live albums. One of the best live albums. It's a very good produced live record, and it's full of different versions. But I think we'll talk about that a little bit later. But overall, I've heard this album a whole bunch. I just listened to it today, preparing for the episode, and I think for the most part, it's a pretty long live album, but it does go by pretty fast. So, really good album. Just starting off here, I think it's a really good album. So, back to you, Steve.
All right. Pete, do you have any opening thoughts for the album before we get into the track listing?
Pretty good. Got most of the classics and some of the newer ones like T from Texas and Needles and the Spoon.
Oh yeah,
That's all I
yeah.
got
That's
right
all right.
now.
That's good. So maybe we can get on into the track listing. We've all had our thoughts about the album. So to you, Devin, with the track listing.
All right. Well, we are doing the re reissue set list, so it's a much longer version of the show. It's got, I believe, around 16 tracks is the reissue. The original track listing was, I believe, 14 songs. And yeah, 14 songs. Yeah. So we start this album off with, to me, the definitive Skynyrd opener. I know they opened with a various different versions or various different songs all throughout their career. But to me, this is the definitive Skynyrd opener, and that is Working for MCA. Of course, that was the label they were on at the time. And I love it. I mean, it's got that swamp groove that, I mean, all those southern rock bands had kind of a similar groove like that at times. I love it. I think it's a great way to open
Mhm.
the album up, and they've opened countless shows with this track throughout the years. And like I said, the definitive Skynyrd opener to me, I love it. I think it's great. So to you, Pete, what's your thoughts on Working for MCA?
It's pretty good. It's a good sounding track for it. It has some of the good stuff like the Working MCA. The Crossroads, and swamp music and stuff like that. Sounds pretty good too.
Okay. And also, I love the guitar playing. Like you said, Steve, this was the first album with Steve Gaines as the guitarist. And he brought a whole lot to the band, in my opinion. And, I mean, they had lost Ed King. They had done Give Me Back My Bullets with only two guitars, or only two guitarists. I think it's really good. I think he was a great addition to the band, a key songwriter, of course, on the next album. So, Stephen, what's your thoughts on working for MCA?
Well, I think it has a great groove to it and all, but the intro to the whole thing to me seems sort of random and uncalled for. You know, the whole string or it sounds like strings or whatever it is to the song. I mean, not part of the real song, but you know what I mean. The production is really good on this one. You can hear a lot of it's very rhythmic, full, you know, and evened out. And probably the thing about this whole album too, I'll go ahead and say, is you could take a bootleg from any show from Lynyrd Skynyrd, just about any time before this or a lot after this, and it would probably sound about the same as this, because they don't really change a lot with their track listing or performing or any of that for anything. So, but great track. And back to you, Devin.
All righty. Well, the second track is I Ain't the One, the opener to the pronounced Lynyrd Skynyrd album. And basically they see right from working for MCA right into I Ain't the One, and it's fantastic. I mean, it's another one that has that swamp groove in it, kind of this bluesy, just awesome song. Love it. I think it's a fantastic song. Probably one of the more underrated Skynyrd songs from that classic era. And I really enjoy it. I think I Ain't the One is a really, really good song. So do you. Pete, what's your thoughts on I Ain't the One?
Pretty good. It's groovy sounding.
Okay. So, Steve, what's your thoughts on I Ain't the One?
It's pretty it has that Skinner sound for sure, that typical Skinner sound, and it kind of gets lost in the mix. Like when you ask people about Lynyrd Skynyrd, they wouldn't probably name this one, but they would name stuff like Freebird or Simple Man or something. But this is one of the great ones by Lynyrd Skynyrd also, and it just kind of gets lost in the mix because some of them sound the same. But it's just because of the instrumentation and all. But I think it's a great track. Moves along really well, and I like the track listing order too. And we'll get into that later. With you always say, Devin, that you have a problem with the track listing, but what about you, brother?
Well, as far as track listing goes, I actually enjoyed the track listing on this album. I love how they put the, see, with the reissue, actually, they put the songs in order of the concert. So it's actually arranged in the proper order of the show. So I think that's very interesting. And I'll talk about the original release and then the other stuff at the end of the review. But then we move to the next song, Saturday Night Special, off of Nothing Fancy. And I love it. I mean, it's classic Skynyrd. I love Saturday Night Special. I mean, it's just a all-around great song, one that they played to this day. And I don't want to get on the newer Skynyrd lineup too much, because I'm not one that hates that lineup. But I know a lot of people are like, well, after it should never happened after the plane crash. I disagree. I mean, what happened. I mean, whatever. I mean, it's a lot different sounding. I mean, I don't think they sound like this classic Skynyrd at all. But I mean, you don't have the original members in here. You have various other people, so you don't have the same songwriting. So that's my little rant on modern day Skynyrd. I don't hate modern day Skynyrd. So Saturday Night Special, amazing song. So Pete, what's your thoughts on Saturday Night Special?
Class, and it's original Lynyrd Skynyrd song. And it sounds great.
Okay.
That's my thoughts on it.
Okay, so we're pretty short. Yes, I like that. It's short and to the point. You got the opinions on it. So, Steven, what's your thought on Saturday Night Special?
Well, this one is probably the most live staple, where maybe besides Freebird, the live staples of this whole thing. Like every time you couldn't go to a Lynyrd Skynyrd show without hearing Saturday Night Special or Freebird. And there's a couple of others like Give Me Three Steps, but I mean, they did those live every single time. But and really for a good cause, because it's a great song, and it's again one of the Lynyrd Skynyrd classics, like Pete was saying earlier. So back to you, Devin.
All right. So then we move to kind of somewhat a deep cut off of Give Me Back My Bullets. Of course, this was the album they were touring for at the time. So the track Searching. I love this song. I mean, it's kind of somewhat a deep cut. I don't think they've performed it very much since this era, but I love it. I think Searching's a very cool song. It's the return of that kind of swamp groove that I was talking about earlier. Great song. And this is from, like I said, from Give Me Back My Bullets. I believe it came out in '76 actually too. So that's all I have for track 4, Searching. So Pete, what do you think of this track?
Pretty good. It sounds good.
Okay.
That's all I gotta say.
All right, and I love the instrumentation all throughout this album. I mean, you've got Artemis Powell on the drums, you've got 3 guitars, you've got just Leon Wilkeson killing it on bass, Ronnie up there singing his heart out the whole time, Billy Powell on the keyboards. I mean, it's just the instrumentation and the musicianship throughout this album is fantastic. So, Stephen, what's your thoughts on Searching?
Well, this one was on Give Me Back My Bullets, as you said before, I believe, and it's a bit slower than that version, that album version, and I think it goes over pretty good, but I do like it kind of the faster, pepped up, a little better, but this one went over pretty well. And the thing is with Skynyrd is they this is a great performance, this whole album, but it's kind of just the same thing as the album tracks. They play the solo the same exact way, which some people say is fine and all that, which, I mean, if you look at it that way, but it's just a little bit slower version of the same thing. But it's really good. It's really good performance and all. Like you said, this is pretty much the opposite of Saturday Night Special, and it's not really a live staple at all. They hardly ever did it live, I'm pretty sure. I'm kind of interested to know why they chose some of these to do, because you think if it's just, like the title says, One More from the Road, you think they would just do their normal lineup, but whatever. I mean, set list or, one of those. Anyway, so great song. Back to you, Devin.
All righty. Well, we move to the next track, Traveling Man. And this is a song that was for years live only. They never did record it officially for a studio record. And it eventually did make a studio album in 1997's 20. And basically, they took vocals from around this time and added with Johnny Van Zant's vocals and made a duet with the two, and I think that's a pretty cool version. But it goes over very well on that album. But I love this song. I think Traveling Man's a very good song. I mean, like I said, it was for years and a live only, album only song. So, Pete, what's your thoughts on Traveling Man?
I like it. Many people did their versions of Traveling Man as well, and it sounds pretty good, and I like it.
Okay. So, Stephen, what's your thoughts?
What album was this off of, brother?
Well, like I said, it was a live only. They had just written the song just put in this. It was on this album for years. This was the only place you could find the song. Then they actually put it out on a actual album in the 90s with 20, and I did it good. That version good too. So.
All right, but anyway, about Traveling Man, I like the vocals and all the harmonization. That went over very well, and I like this choice for this song to be on this album for sure. But like you said, I guess it was kind of for this album, but I think that they should have done a lot more of that for this, and not just done the same ones over and over for a live album. I mean, for a live show, it's not recorded, it's different, but you could, to me, if you could do it and just put it not put it on the album. For this one, I think it's really good to put on there. And I think when Gary Rosington breaks out that slide, he really knows what he's doing with it. It sounds really good on this particular track, in my opinion. So, and I think he needs to do that a lot more often, play slide and stuff over it. So, back to you, Devin.
All righty. Well, then we move to a total Skynyrd classic, one that they're performing to this day, and that is Simple Man from the first album. I mean, it's a classic Skynyrd track. I mean, everybody has heard it. I mean, even if you're not a Skynyrd fan, you've probably heard this song at one point or another. Even if you don't know anything about Lynyrd Skynyrd, you've probably heard this song. So I love this song. I mean, I'm a little bit, at this point, a little bit kind of burnt out, but I still, if it comes on, I can listen to it. I mean, it's a very cool song. I really enjoy it. So, to you, Pete, what's your thoughts on it?
Like you said, many people have heard of it, and plus, some people, if they listen to it, they said, "Oh, I have heard that before." So many people know it, but they don't know the song, the name of it. They do know that they heard it.
Okay.
All I gotta say.
All right. So, Stephen, what's your thoughts on Simple Man?
Well, I've watched some bootleg type shows and stuff from '76 and '75 and different years from this era of Lynyrd Skynyrd. And I don't recall ever seeing them doing Simple Man live much. I don't think they did it a whole lot. You know, the original Lynyrd Skynyrd before the plane crash. But you know, like you said, they're doing it a lot with the newer Lynyrd Skynyrd lineup and all that, replicating it with all the guitar solos and stuff. That goes over really good. They made a lot of live albums with this on it and stuff, and Freebird and all that. We'll get into that later. But anyway, this I wish they would have chosen this one to do live a lot more, because I think it goes over live better than some of the ones they did do a lot more. Like the next one, Whiskey Rock a Roller. I don't know if it goes over better live as good as Simple Man does. But we'll get into that later. So back to you, Dev.
All righty. And we lost Pete, but all right, he's back now. So we then move to the next song on the album, Whiskey Rock a Roller. This is, of course, off of Nothing Fancy. I believe the final song on that album. Whiskey Rock a Roller, great song. Another one of those kind of underrated Skynyrd tracks. I mean, I don't think it was really ever a full-on staple for the band. Of course, it's probably been brought back into the set here and there now. They have brought back some songs periodically for the sets. But overall, Whiskey Rock and Roll is a really good song. And this is actually where the backup singers come out. And that they consist, of course, they're the Honkettes. They consist of Cassie Kane, JoJo Billingsley, or Joe Billingsley, as she's credited on this album, and Leslie Hawkins. And I mean, they come out and sing on this song. So Whiskey Rock and Roller, great track. So Pete, what's your thoughts?
No comment.
Okay. So Steve, what's your thoughts on Whiskey Rock and Roller?
I think it's a pretty good song. I believe that originally Ed King had played the lead guitar stuff on it. And like I said before, it doesn't go over live quite as well as some of these other songs. But as a song, it's really good, and it kind of shows the songwriting ability of the band. And well, specifically the lead singer, Ronnie Van Zant, actually. I believe he probably wrote this and wrote a lot of songs that they did on this album, if I'm not mistaken, with the exception of Call Me the Breeze and a couple of other ones like T for Texas and Crossroads. I believe he wrote every other song on this album. This whole album pretty much showcases his songwriting ability, and the way it goes over live, which it goes over pretty well. So back to you, Devin.
All righty. Well, we then move to the next track, The Needle and the Spoon. And, I mean, this is one of the greatest Skynyrd songs ever. I love this song. Just amazing. I mean, the whole riff, love it. I love the whole intro riff of it. Overall, The Needle and the Spoon, great track. So, Pete, what's your thoughts on this song?
It's one of the greatest ones of Lynyrd Skynyrd because it has the most rock and roll sound to it.
Okay.
My thoughts.
All right. So, Steve, what's your thoughts on The Needle and the Spoon?
I think it's a great song, and I agree with Pete a lot. It has that rock and roll sound. It has a similar type chord progression. I've played it a lot before on guitar. That similar chord progression that a lot of these rock songs have, and kind of that descending riff or whatever. And I think it sounds really good. And again, Ronnie Van Zant, it shows he's a great songwriter. And this one, I believe, was one of their other live staples too, that they did almost every time you came to a show was Needle and Spoon. You heard it. So it obviously does go over really good. So back to you, Devin.
All righty. Well, then we enter a track. I don't think it was not. It was not on the original version of this album. And that is Give Me Back My Bullets. And then, of course, the title track to the album of the same name. I love it. I mean, it's got that, once again, that groove, love it. I mean, that groove sells the song for me. And that's pretty much all I have for it. It's an amazing song. Instrumentation all throughout is really, really good. So, to you, Pete, what's your thoughts on Give Me
My
Back?
thoughts about features is that it has a nice groove to it, and it sounds pretty good. That's my thought.
All righty. So, Stephen, what's your thoughts?
It definitely has that typical Lynyrd Skynyrd sound to it. And I think that's pretty much a product of Alan Collins and Gary Rosington getting together, writing these songs with, I believe Ronnie Van Zant was mainly the lyricist. And I think the way this went was, this was obviously an original song by them, I'm pretty sure. And then Alan would come up, or Gary would come up with a riff, either one of those, and then he would, if you hear the story, he would kind of start sitting there and close his eyes or whatever and come up with the lyrics, and that's how it would go, and then it'd be a song pretty much. And I think this is one of those they did that with, and it's kind of crazy how that story goes. You have to go check it out if you don't know what I'm talking about. But he's a great lyricist too. So in my opinion, back to you, brother.
All righty. Well, then we move to the next track, Tuesday's Gone. And this has actually a guest musician by the name of Sam McPherson. I'm assuming it's McPherson, on harmonica. And I didn't even know he was on this album until looking at the personnel and lineup today. He guests on this particular track as the harmonica player. I mean, classic Skynyrd off of the first album, I believe. An amazing song. I think it's a great song. Another one that's I'm a little bit burnt out on, and I've heard it a million times, but I still enjoy it. So, to you, Pete, what's your thoughts on Tuesday's Gone?
Pretty good song, and it's played over 1,000 times almost, and it's still pretty good. My thought.
Okay. So, Steve, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, this is definitely classic Skynyrd, like you said, but they don't do it a lot. Or I don't know if they do it recently live, but they used to do it. I don't think they used to do it live much either. But because I think they tend to just play those songs that are kind of more fast paced, stuff like
Mm.
stuff like Give Me Three Steps and Call Me the Breeze and stuff like that, faster paced. But I think they every once in a while like for example, Freebird, the first part of it is a slow song, but they still play it live because of the mainly because it's a great way to close out the show because the fast part at the end. They kind of put it in the middle of the set list for that reason, pretty much, because you don't want to end it off or start it too slow, but kind of in the middle. But that's pretty much what I got to say to you, Devin.
Alrighty, so then we move to the next track, Give Me Three Steps. Classic Skinner. I mean, you just talked about the song a little bit. I mean, speaking of that song, here we go. I mean, starts out with the first part with the whole cowbell and all. I mean, that's amazing. Sets the song up, and then they get into everything. I love it. I mean, the whole breakdown in the middle of it. I mean, it's cool. Or breakdown, kind of the middle part of the song. Really cool. So that's all I have for Give Me Three Steps. Then we move to Pete's opinion. So what's your thoughts on Give Me Three Steps?
It's pretty good. It got the southern rock and roll sound to it. My thoughts to it.
Okay, definitely. It's a boogie rock and roll type song. So,
Mhm.
Steve, what's your thoughts on this song?
Brother, I think this one has sort of more of a honky tonk type feel to it, and
Definitely.
yeah, and that was Southern Rock definitely too, but that's definitely in there. But also this one was the I know I keep saying the live staples, but it's just kind of what comes to mind to say for this type of stuff. This one was definitely, like I said before, if you went to a Skinner show, you'd hear this one for sure. This one they play to this day, and but for good reason. Gary Rosington plays the lead part, and I've always loved it, and I just now recently learned how to play it too. So I just now appreciate the part even more because I learned how to play it. But anyway, it's a real good track, and it shows that Gary really knows what he's doing with the guitar, and really, this is kind of a side note, but the main riff that kind of double stop riff, it kind of has the same sound as Saturday Night Special. That riff to it, it uses that same position to play it. But anyway, back to you, Devin.
Alrighty. Well, then we move to the next track, Call Me the Breeze. And of course, this came off of Second Helping. Another one that's just classic Skinner. I mean, of course, this version of the song is sped up tremendously. I mean, the original J.J. Cale's this kind of slow cruising type song. Of course, if you haven't heard it, go look it up. I mean, it's a pretty good version of the song. Clapton did a great version of it as well. But this version is, I mean, it's fast paced. It's just an amazing song and one of the centerpieces of the whole live show. And this runs nearly 6 minutes long. So 5 minutes and 51 seconds according to what I'm looking at on Wikipedia. So if it's a true source, that's your opinion. I don't. I find discrepancies in it. I digress. So Call Me the Breeze, fantastic song. Pete, what's your thoughts on it?
It's a great song, and it goes by like a breeze almost from how it goes. That's my thoughts on it.
Okay. Steve?
Well, this one is the fast version and the live version they always do, but the album version off second helping, my bad, is a lot slower. But to me, either way, it goes over really good. I mean, because
Mhm.
they do the same guitar parts and everything, and they play this one, "Call Me the Breeze," the album version on the radio, like classic rock radio. They play "Sweet Home Alabama" on classic rock radio. And every once in a while, I'll hear "Give Me Three Steps" on there too. So this stuff is still being played today, especially this song here, like on 100.7, and I don't know about 96.1, but I know they have on 100. But besides the point, great song, and it don't matter the tempo, it goes over really good. So to you.
All righty, and I mean, I'm going to go on record here and say that this very well might be the most important Southern rock band of all time. I mean, you have Allman Brothers, which is good within itself. I mean, the Allman Brothers is a great band, and then you have Molly Hatchet, which is kind of, some people look at it as being kind of a takeoff of this band in a way. Of course, there is a connection between the two, but I mean, still, I mean, they're probably to me the most important Southern rock band because I mean, they changed the tide and showed that kind of these old rednecks could get out there and play. And I mean, I love it. I think they're an amazing band. So then we move to track number 13. Well, this is actually the final song on the first disc of the deluxe edition. And we go to the track T for Texas. Blue Yodel #1, a Jimmy Rogers cover. And of course, I mean, they take the bassist of Allman Brothers One Way Out and basically make it into a song. And I think it's really good, fast-paced. I mean, the slide work by Steve Gaines. I believe it's Steve Gaines that played slide on this one.
Definitely
Maybe.
so.
I think it's a great live rendition. One they played for quite a while. They brought it back here more recently. But overall, really good song. So, Pete, what's your thoughts?
Pretty good. Many people made their versions of this song too, as well. Even Johnny Cash.
Okay.
My thoughts on it.
Okay. So, Steve, what about you?
This is one of those songs that can be interpreted a lot of different ways as far as the styles and all. But Devin, I'll just ask real quick, why does it say Blue Yodel #1 on it beside it? Why can't it just say T for Texas?
Because the original song, I think, had yodeling in it, if I'm not bad wrong. Because
but this don't though.
Yeah, I know the original version's a lot slower. It's very slow country.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say about T for Texas that I think Steve Gaines, I mean, he killed it on guitar through the whole thing, especially the intro. They need to let him have a lot bigger part in this whole show, in my opinion, because he can play the heck out of the slide guitar. And it's short of the time he was in Lynyrd Skynyrd and was in the Big Time Fame or whatever. You know, for the short of the time he was in there, kind of like Dwayne Allman in that way, that he was really recognized as one of the best, and he didn't have much of a chance to even prove himself. So that's pretty impressive. But I think he's one of the best slide players ever. I mean, he didn't even play that many. I'm just going off of this, I'd say that, you know. And also, during the intro of the song, did y'all hear like Ronnie Van Zant? Did he cuss in it? Because it sounded like he said the F word or something.
Yeah.
He said F word. He said GD.
Yeah, he said both of them, I think.
No, he said that boy is funky.
Hey, it sounds like it to me.
I know. I could tell where you're coming from.
But anyway, that's just the point I thought I'd make, because every time I hear it, I could swear he's saying them two cuss words. But anyway, so back to you, Devin.
Okay, so then we move to actually the opening of side or disc 2, Sweet Home Alabama. What can I say about the song? It hasn't already been said. I mean, it's Skinner's answer to Neil Young's Southern Man, and it's overplayed on the radio, but it's a classic Skinner track. I enjoy it. So, Pete, what's your thoughts?
It's one of the classic ones, and plus, it's almost played almost every time. Even at football games, people play it. That's my thought.
Okay. So, Steve, what's your thoughts?
I mean, I wonder what Ronnie Van Zant would be thinking if he knew when he wrote this song that they would still be playing this on the radio like Pete said, at football games and stuff, at probably every football game in the whole South, you know, and or at least in Alabama, I know. And I
Yeah.
just wonder what he if he really thought that he was going to go that far. They probably didn't. And they said, well, anyway, Skinner said that this was probably their Ramblin' Man, which if you know Ramblin' Man by the Allman Brothers, this was, like that sort of style hit or song, This is probably their
Yeah.
biggest, along with Free. I'm not sure commercially if Freebird or Sweet Home Alabama did the best, but those are two. I'm pretty sure those two are the commercially successful the most. Anyway, on this particular version, it's not a lot different, apart from the fact that Steve Gaines does a really good slow blues style solo. I know it's not a slow blues song, but he does that style of solo, and it sounds really good with this. And he does it where normally Alan Collins would come in with his solo, and he just comes in with it later with it, and it makes it sort of longer, and with the normal other solos. But Steve Gaines did a great job on this one. So back to you, Devin.
Okay. So then we move to the next song on the album, Crossroads, of course, cover of Robert Johnson's song. It's more of a cover of the Cream version than Robert Johnson, because they basically take the version that Cream did with the more faster paced type stuff and basically did it that way. So great instrumentation throughout, great solos. You got Artemis Pyle doing some double bass on the album, which is amazing. And it's overall a great rendition of the song, and one of my favorites on the particular album. So, Pete, what about you? What's your thoughts?
Mine's about the same as yours. It's just great instrumentation and good musician stuff in it. It sounds pretty good. That's my thought.
All right. So, Stephen, what about you?
Well, I think we're gonna get into the deluxe edition side of it later, but the extra tracks that were added. But I like the version that they added later to the deluxe edition better than this one. It's the same song and it's the same tempo. It's just that it's a different show. One of the days in succession of they did 3 shows, and I like the one that they released on the deluxe edition because it's just a lot cleaner and the production's better. And by the way, the solo, there's a lot of soloing in it, and all the soloing is pretty much it's by Alan Collins, and you can tell mainly because Ronnie says, Alan, take a ride before he starts. Well, not on this version, but on the other one. Anyway, you can tell it's Alan Collins playing. He does a really good job with the solos. Really picks up the song a lot, and he really what I'm getting to is he copied the solo basically from Eric Clapton's Winterland Cream version, and he just kind of put his own spin to it, but he basically copied it. You can go listen to that, and you can definitely see the two. There's not much difference between them. He put his own spin to it and all, but anyway, I'm just saying, like, this version is good, but I like the deluxe edition better. So to you, Devin.
All right. Well, what do you want to hear? What will close out this album? Play It Pretty for Atlanta is the part I remember the most. Of course, Freebird. Classic Skynyrd. It has that very long ending. It's just a long jam out song, and it's classic Skynyrd, and I can't say too much about it. So, Pete, what's your thoughts?
It's one of the fast songs of it, and it's pretty good sounding song to it. And that's my
Okay.
thought.
Okay. Steve, what about you?
This one, I bet you everybody in the whole world knows. Even the name Freebird, they'll know what that is, because at every concert there's always that one guy that yells out, "Play Freebird" or something, at the end of it. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so it's pretty much a great track, and this version is 14 minutes long, and I think it's almost 15, basically. Well, that's 14 and a half, I think. But this is the
Yeah.
long version, and pretty much it just shows, the original album. What if they wouldn't? Not the original, the Second Helping album. This is off of, I believe, and I'm or is it, Devin?
I think it's off of the first album.
Okay, so anyway, it doesn't really matter. I'm just saying the record version of this studio version. This shows what it would have sounded like if they wouldn't have faded it out. Basically, what I'm getting at. And Alan had a lot more to do, and they do that. He does the solo the same way every time, but it never gets old. To this day, it still never gets old when they play it on the radio. So to me or to anybody really. So back to you, Devin.
Alrighty. And oddly enough, a version of the studio with this ending exists.
That's what I
It
figured.
came out.
I've never heard it, but I figured that's exactly what it would have sounded like if they wouldn't have faded it out.
It
Yeah.
came out on a compilation called Skynyrd's Innards.
Huh.
So it came out, I believe, '89 or something. So then, I mean, I don't want to go through this whole track list. We'll kind of just breeze through it if that's good.
To start with the deluxe edition.
Yeah, we'll go to the deluxe or rarities version. It's got a total of, I believe, 8 songs that are alternate takes from the nights that they recorded this album. And I mean, we've talked about every one of these tracks. Some of the tracks are a bit alternate. I mean, some of them you can tell the reasons they didn't make it to the album. I mean, they're still good performances, but like on Working for MCA, for instance, Artemis messes up on drums for the drum beat. I did hear that. And there's one part on either Crossroads or one of those songs to where one of them messes up on the guitar solo. They go like a little bit under the key that they were trying to get in for the solo. Yeah. But other than that, I think they're solid performances. I love the part on Crossroads where he says EC was here. That was fun. I found that pretty funny. So, Stephen, Pete, what's your overall thoughts on the deluxe edition versions?
Pretty good. On one of them, you go on YouTube. I think one of them says Sycamore on one of them. When the song on one of the songs.
It did. I think that was on T for Texas.
Yeah, I think that was. It was funny though too.
Yeah, he was talking about Steve Gaines from Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So, Stephen, what's your thoughts on the deluxe edition versions?
Like you said, I did notice that very one that time that Artemis messed up on the drum part. I can't remember which song it was, but I remember thinking it when I heard it that he messed up. It wasn't terrible, but you know what I mean. And it's just a little thing. But a lot of these, I can't really almost tell the difference between why they would have chose this one to go over that one on different versions of different shows. I really, some of them I can't even tell the difference. I mean, almost I think they just said any, mini, mighty, mo, and chose one, because some of them sound exactly the same to me. It's like Freebird. Like the only difference is the stuff Ronnie Van Zant says in between the vocal parts. That's the only difference between them. But other than that, I think it was a good idea to release this stuff because a lot of people would probably want to hear it. That especially after the fact of the plane crash and all. So there was the live shows and a lot of these bootlegs and stuff too. So back to you, Devin.
Alrighty, and some of these tracks have actually been released on previous versions of the album, so that's pretty interesting to me. They not previous versions of the album, but previous albums prior to this. So that pretty well wraps it up. I do want to talk about the various versions of the album before we start wrapping things up here. So, of course, as I said, starting things out, the original track listing was 14 songs. And when they first released this album in 1986, they released it as a single disc album. So they actually took 2 tracks out, and that was T for Texas and Traveling Man. And they took those out due to time restraints. And when they did re-release the album in '96 as a 2-disc album with all the tracks, they added the version of Sweet Home Alabama that's the deluxe edition version, as well as Give Me Back My Bullets and Simple Man, and then arranged them in the order of appearance in the concert. So I do have the original vinyl record copy right here, and I'll just breeze through the set list. This is the original 14 songs. Working for MCA, I Ain't the One, Searching, Tuesday's Gone, Saturday Night Special, Traveling Man, Whiskey Rock-a-Roller, Sweet Home Alabama, Give Me 3 Steps, Call Me the Breeze, T for Texas, The Needle and the Spoon, Crossroads, and Freebird. So that's the original vinyl version of the song, of the album, excuse me. So that pretty well wraps this album up, pretty much. This is actually the first live album we've actually done on the show, I believe. It was released September of 1976. It was certified gold on October 26th of 1976, went platinum on December 30th of 1976, and went 3 times platinum on July 21st, 1987. Pretty successful album for the band, and well, like I said, one of my favorite live albums of all time. I love it. And this was recorded June 7th through 9th of 1976, Fox Theater, Atlanta, Georgia. And it was originally, I said September 76, September 13th of 1976 to be exact. And the deluxe edition version came out on 9/11, September 11th, 2001. So I found that kind of a little bit eerie, but
That's kind of odd.
yeah, it is.
Yeah.
So that pretty much wraps the album up. Pete, what's your rank? What is your rating out of 10 for this album?
Probably about 9
Okay.
is my rating.
All right.
'Cause
What about you, Steve?
Well, for me, I agree with Pete. I originally thought about maybe saying 7 or 8, but I'm gonna go ahead and say 9 because it's a really great performance, and the band is very tight, and there weren't a lot of mess ups. Well, because they had their choice of 3 different shows too. But I mean, if you listen to some of the additional ones added later of the tracks, there weren't a lot of mess ups anyway. Besides from rhythmic things, and that's no big deal a lot of times, but. And I think they need to vary the song choice up a little bit more to maybe more at least of the deep cuts rather than the bigger hits and stuff. But especially if you're gonna have stuff like a live album, maybe choose more stuff like Crossroads and T for Texas. I like those 2 choices the best to do. I think those turned out really good. And the only thing with Skynyrd is they do a song. What they did it one way when they recorded it in the studio, and they do it the same way over and over again live, and to this day they still do it the same exact way, same solos and everything. But I mean, it's tolerable, but it's like that's one thing that's always gotten on my nerves a little bit about Skynyrd. The stuff is now, don't get me wrong, the solos are great, but it's just that it's the same thing over and over, no matter if it's live now or live from 70s or in the studio. It's like the same thing over and over. But other than that, I mean, they're just a great band in my opinion. I love listening to the stuff, and I think they should have let Steve. That's the only complaint I have. Besides, also Steve Gaines really should have did a lot more work on it. They should have let him loose on some of that blues type stuff. I can tell he's a really good blues guitarist. So that's pretty much my finishing thoughts. 9 out of 10. I agree with Gerald. So, what about to you, brother?
All righty. I almost said So overall, I'm gonna go 9.5 out of 10. I think it's a strong performance. Great, great album. Classic live album. One of my favorites of all time. And I can't say too much else about it. I've heard it very, very many times. It's one of those classic live albums in the history of music. And I mean, of course, like you said earlier, the first with Steve Gaines, of course, he would come into play a lot with Street Survivors, which would unfortunately be their last album with kind of a classic lineup, or the pre-plane crash lineup. But overall, I enjoy this album, and that's been another episode. So, Pete, you got any last words before we wrap it up here?
9/11. That's all, folks.
Okay. So, we can now wrap this show up. This is to be out at some point in the coming weeks. Don't know exactly when yet. But, Steven, what about you? Any last words?
I had a good time with this one, and good to have old Pete on the show today. And yeah, I believe he had a good time too, hopefully. And yep. So that was a great episode, brother. Back to you.
All righty. So, hope you all enjoyed this episode. I'm not going to get into plugs or picks of the week or anything this week, since this is kind of a special episode. So, just hope you all enjoyed this episode. Thanks so much for listening. And we'll be back with a episode pretty soon. God bless you all. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay free, stay frosty. And as always, like I say on every single episode, see you next time.